So, a very warm welcome tonight. Bienvenue en Champagne. Today, I am calling from Cologne, Germany, and for me, it's Carnival. So everyone has something ahead or something. So therefore, I have this kind of hat, and thank you tonight that Champagne is joining us for a Carnival day. And welcome Laurent Champs de Villemar, Champagne Villemar, Nicolas Maillart de Champagne Alfred Krasia.
Thank you.
Et Nico Maillart, je dis toujours maintenant Nico Maillart parce qu'il y a deux Nicolas aujourd'hui, Nico Maillart de Champagne Nicolas. Et bienvenue à tout le monde. Je vais enlever my head.
Hello, everybody.
I speak, now I have spoken French, but sorry for that. When I speak with French people, I very often talk in French. Tonight, we are in Champagne. Behind me, you see the map. And I am organizer of the International Sparkling Festival, and because of the pandemic, it couldn't take part. So I gather now different people, different groups, and today is Champagne. Some of you, they have already seen me in my live streams. And if we are going to Champagne area here, here we have Reims. This is where we find the cathedral. And we have 4 areas. And we start today because we have they have a lot of wines in this area in the north, in Montagne de Reims. We have the Vallée de la Marne and La Côte des Blancs. And here it's very far, it's about 150 kilometers. We have La Côte des Bas, but we will do a tasting as well of this area, only with this area, because it's very interesting as well. Today we are in this region, and we start with Laurent Champs, because you are part of the group of Les Artisans. And Les Artisans, what does it mean? What is the group, and what are you doing? And then we taste later our champagnes. For the information, for everyone who wants to be in the chat, you have to be inscribed to YouTube. So you can chat with us, you can ask questions, but please inscribe to YouTube. Laurent, Les Artisans, it seems to be very, very interesting. A group, Les Artisans and the artists. Explain us a little bit about this group.
This group, Les Artisans du Champagne, I can say was born in 2010, so a little bit more than 10 years. We should have celebrated our 10th anniversary, but we have just to postpone a little bit. So we were 5 winegrowers just at the beginning, like Jérôme Dehour in Vallée de la Marne, François Huret, very close from us in Lude, Gilles Lancelot in Cramant, Christophe Constant, who worked for Champagne Vergnon, and me for Champagne Villemar. So we decided to create, to settle an association, but just to show, to express the desire to show the same philosophy of our, I could say, handcraft wines, which means our philosophy is to respect the soil, the nature, the vine, and the human. And through different growers, we wanted to show the typicity of each terroir, each maybe villages. And as I told you before, we started with 5 growers. A few months later, we were 10 growers. And today, 11 years later, we are 17. So 17 wine growers from Montagne de Reims, from Vallée de la Marne, Côte des Blancs, and 1 grower now from the Aube. So on the south part. So today and since the beginning, we wanted to invite professional journalists, sommelier, importer, champagne lovers, and by and large, we managed to invite between 400 to 500 people for one special day we call la Journée des Artisans, and where every growers we show first of all some vin clair, still wine from the previous harvest, and sometimes 3, 4, or maybe sometimes 5 different cuvées of our own house. So it's just to show maybe something which has not done before, vin clair, because it's pretty unique to do that. So we show vin clair, and after we show our cuvée, and we during this day we can exchange, we can talk, and we can present our wines and philosophy all together.
Normally we see us in Le Printemps de Champagne. It's in April, and yes, last year it was cancelled. We don't know whether this year it will happen. But the vin clair, the still wines, are very, very important to produce champagne naturally. And it's very, very interesting. I have been there in the last 10 years, and it's very interesting to taste these wines which have no bubbles, to get the impression of the wine, and to see what will happen. So hopefully we see us next year, because I have very often in your winery, Laurent, and chez Nico and Nicolas as well, and I tasted these wines. So I think now it's time not really to start with the opening a bottle, but to start with an explanation of champagne, and with the first winery. So we come to Alfred Krasia. They are in Épernay, here in the center, where you find these famous Avenue de Champagne and a lot of famous wineries and champagne houses. Nicolas, explain us a little bit about Alfred Krasia, because Alfred Krasia, it's not really a French name, and you have some roots, not you, but the name have some roots. But explain us a little bit about the history of Krasia, Alfred Krasia, Champagne, Alfred Krasia.
Alfred Krasia was founded in 1864. The name of the founder is Alfred Krasia. He's a man from Loire Valley, installed in Épernay. We are a very small company. We are negociant. We have different family in the Champagne region. You have the récoltant manipulant, récoltant coopérateur, and the Maison de Champagne négociant. We are in a negociant family. Why we are negociant? Because we buy the grapes. We have only 1.63 hectares of champagne, and of course, it's not enough to produce Alfred Krasia champagne. We buy the grapes from different growers. Under you have the Champagne region, and you speak about 3 regions: Montagne de Reims, Côte des Blancs, and Vallée de la Marne. This is where we buy the grapes. Why? Because it's not too far from Épernay. And we are a very small company, and when we buy grapes, we buy a small quantity. And with the proximity, we can have a good relation, and it's easy to find, more easy for me to find a good grapes or the good quality. Because one thing very important for me, and it's exactly the same for my colleague, Laurent, or for all Nicolas and Artisans du Champagne, one thing very important, like the man make the kitchen, work in the kitchen. One thing very important, good grapes can give good wine. And for me, I don't control my grapes, but it's very important for me to find a grower work in very good condition. Particularity of Alfred Krasia is my family too, because I'm lucky man. I am the 4th generation of my family to be a winemaker. My father teach me 17 years, and now I work for Alfred Krasia since 1990. And the particularity of Alfred Krasia is we make wine only in wood. 100% the wine we
one moment, because we were talking about how you produce the wines and about the yield, and I want to ask you, it's not a real family estate, but you are in a family. You are the wine. All the winemakers are in one family. So how does it work? So they were when they started. So Alfred Krasia, they asked your grandfather to join, or how does it work? And with you as well, because you were in Champagne, and sometimes young people, they have other ideas, they don't want to stay, and but you stay really in Champagne, and you join this estate. What was your intention?
This one thing very important. My great grandfather was a winemaker. He worked before with Mr. Roux. I don't know. I think Mr. Roux teach him, of course. But after my grandfather continued, my father too, and me. This is for me normal, because it's like I don't know if you know, but we have a bande dessinée BD in France. The name is Astérix and Obélix. It's exactly the same for me. I go in the potion. Magic potion, and I won't continue to make champagne. It's normal for me. Always I work with my grandfather, with my father in the vineyard, because we are winemaker, but we are lucky because we have a small exploitation. I don't know, we have some parcel in Champagne, in Marne Valley on Côte des Blancs, and for me is natural, and I hope my son continue. I don't know now, but he's too young, 14 years only.
This will be great. Perhaps we will have him on screen in 10 years or whatever. So I think now it's time to open a bottle as well, and to start with the first champagne. We have an order. We start with Alfred Krasia, then we go to Nicolas Maillart, and at the end we will taste the Grand Reserve from Villemar. We will explain the other 3 champagnes, because there are some people, they bought the 6 bottles, and some of you only the 3, but we will explain later the other ones as well. So if we start now with your champagne, it's Champagne Alfred Krasia, and so it's the wine which is not a bit, it's an entrée gamme that we start, and explain us a little bit, how do you work? Because tonight we have 3 wineries, they work in wood, but in different styles. So explain us a little bit, what does it mean?
In this champagne, this is the name for me is the Brut Classic. The classic one is very important for Alfred Krasia, because this is our ambassador. Every year we make a Brut Classic, but we make only the vintage for when we have the best grapes, best quality. And of course, every year we must make a Brut Classic. A particularity of Alfred Krasia, we produce our wine only in the barrel, small one, but it's not only a time in a barrel after the fermentation. We directly, when the grape juice come in the winery, we put the grape juice in the barrel. We do alcoholic fermentation, and we block malolactic fermentation. This is Alfred Krasia wine. It's not really normal. I think a lot of artisans du Champagne do not the same, but approximately the same. But I think 90% in Champagne do malolactic fermentation. Alfred Krasia decided to never do malolactic fermentation to have more acidity in the wine, but this acidity, I think, keep the wine fresh for a very long time. And this is one of the reasons, the barrel, the no malolactic fermentation, this is the best reason why we are different. Mm-hmm. After, in this one, you have different grapes, come from Vallée de la Marne, Côte des Blancs, and Montagne de Reims. You have 50% Chardonnay, you have 25% Pinot Noir and 25% Pinot Meunier. And the grapes come from 40 kilometers around Epernay. On the base of the wine, because the Brut Classic, you can mix different year. The base of the wine is year 15, with some perpetual reserve come from 14, 13, 12, 11, etc., etc.
Nicolas, one moment, because we have not only professionals on the screen, we have some, I know that there are some professionals, but they, not all of them, they know how it works with champagne. So if we start in the cellar, you put the grapes in, you have a fermentation, the first fermentation to produce the still wines in the barrels as well. And these are old barrels. I have already been in your cellar. These are old barrels. They are not really new because you don't want to have the taste of wood in the wines. And
one thing very important when you work in wood for Alfred Krasia style, we don't want to feel too much wood in our glass. For me, it's important if the wood help the wine for the expression, for the maturity, for the wine is go longer in your month. But this is one way very important. But we don't produce wine in wood to have wood in the glass. For me, it must be very subtle. For this reason, we keep a long time in a barrel, but with sediment, because the sediment after the first fermentation kept a part of the wood flavor. And this is very important when you test a glass of champagne. You can understand this is wood, but it's not the bigger expression.
Okay, so if we talk now about the grapes, you told us that you have different grapes. So we have three main grapes in Champagne. It's Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Meunier. And then we have some forgotten grape varieties, and you are not working with them. But here you have a lot of Chardonnay inside, and
50%.
Yes, and when we taste it, so it seems to be not wood, but it seems to be complex. I think it has some complex aromas and some apple and apricot. So I am what? Pardon?
Bread, brioche.
Bread, yeah,
vanille.
fresh bread, brioche, the brioche notes. And I really like it. And it's something for aperitif, but I think as well to eat something with it.
Yes, you can go on the table. One thing very important, I try to make wine very delicate. For me, it's very important to do. I want the wine for wine lover, but if you speak with Artisans de Champagne, you can hear wine. Is rare, very rare. You hear champagne, because I think we do, all the artisans from Champagne do wine from Champagne. This is one thing very important. I don't want wine very, very heavy. Alfred Krasia style is more delicate, fresh. For me, is one thing very important. If the wine for me is too heavy, it's easy to drink the first glass, but I want to drink the second or the third. This is one thing very, very important. And when you test Alfred Krasia Champagne, always you find very fine bubbles, because when you test wine, you test the noise, the flavor. One thing is very important. If the wine have some gras on the glass, but one thing very important when you test champagne is the texture of the wine too. And when you test Alfred Krasia Champagne, it's very creamy. The bubble is never aggressive. I try to make wine very fresh and elegant. This is one thing very important. Drink for aperitif and more.
It's very, very creamy on the palate, I think. And there is a question in the chat about the dosage. Perhaps we explain only with some words the dosage. After disgorging the champagne, you put some sugar and wine or whatever inside. It can be some reserve wines, and but it's a mixture of sugar, and this is the dosage. So we have a brut, and brut means that we can have until 12 gram sugar in per liter in one bottle. And now there is a question. I think Michael Spitz, I don't know. He asked us. I think he's professional. He asked what is the dosage in this wine, because you have this creaminess, and it's not sweet, but it's very creamy, and it seems to be about how much sugar is in it.
And this one, you have 9 grams. But
9
for
grams,
each
yeah.
cuvée, for each cuvée, we make different experience with 7, 5, 4, 6, and we decide the dosage for each cuvée. But with Alfred Krasia, you understand we don't do malolactic fermentation. When you don't do malolactic fermentation, you have a little bit more acidity. And the particularity of the dosage is do the balance sugar and acidity. And yes, Alfred Krasia make a dosage. I know a lot of Champenois now go down. We have some Brut Nature to do this with Alfred Krasia. But for the Brut Classic, we have 9 grams, depends, sometimes 7 or 8, but this one is 9.
Yeah, it's very aligned. It's very, very straight as well. And this is the freshness, I think, because you don't do malolactic fermentation. We will explain malolactic fermentation a little bit later because the others, they work as well without or with malolactic fermentation. And if we change now a little bit the lieu, the place, we go south of Epernay, about here, and we have Nicolas Maillart on the screen. So, Nico, you are indépendant. You are vigneron indépendant. So that means you have not a group of people who bring the grapes to you. So explain us a little bit, how do you work, and about the history, because you have an old tradition as well.
Yes, so it's a long family story. We started 10 generations ago in 1703. So with an ancestor whose name was Nicolas Maillart. So in the 10th generation, you have 4 Nicolas, and I'm Nicolas. So that's why the name of the winery is Nicolas Maillart. And we were always in Ecueil, and today we have vineyards in Montagne de Reims, and we have vineyards in Villaralran and Bouzy all along Montagne de Reims due to the wedding of my father with my mother. So we have a large part of the vineyards today coming from my mother's side.
So it's here in Montagne de Reims, it's here south of Reims, it's here, Villaralran, it's about here. So it's a small cut, but to have the impression between Reims and Epernay, there are the wineries, the wines.
So today we have 16 hectares only in Premier and Grand Cru, with a majority of Pinot Noir, because which is logical. In Montagne de Reims, you have one of the best expression you can have for Pinot Noir. We have also a bit of Meunier, Chardonnay, and also Petit Meunier.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you work in wood as well. So which approach do you have to work in wood with your champagne?
Okay, it's very similar to Alfred Krasia. We do the alcoholic fermentation in wood. We don't initiate malolactic. The difference I can accept, sometimes it happens by chance because we don't have enough sulfites to be sure there is no malolactic happening. So every year I have part of the wines that makes malolactic, but very few, like between 1 to 3%. And we do long aging in barrels until July usually, and bottling in July. So it's close to 1 year of aging in barrels. For the same reason Nicolas said, in order to have more power, and also the leaves are taking part of the wood notes, so it helps. The big difference with Alfred Krasia, it's I'm also working only in barrels, but I use partly new oak, but at a very low percent, and with a specific toast, in order to be not too much oaky.
Mm-hmm. So if we are, you explained us, you don't do you do malolactic. Perhaps you can explain to the audience what is it, le malo and malolactic fermentation. Malolactic. You can explain us very simple.
Yeah, very simple. The fermentation malolactic, it's the fact that bacteria are transforming the acid malic into lactic acid. Malic acid, it's more acid than lactic. Malic acid, you have usually the nuts of fresh apple, and lactic acid, it's more for the lactic means milk. So all this butter, this brioche nuts usually. And so when you don't do malolactic, you have more freshness. And in order to do the malolactic, it can happen by accident, naturally. And it's bacteria that make that, a lactic bacteria. And the way to control it is to add a bit of sulfites that kills the bacteria. But that's a classical way.
Okay, so we will taste your wine. It's Platine Premier Cru. The bottle.
Just one word, please.
Yeah.
Just one word. One thing very important, like Nicolas explained to you, he worked in the borough. When you work in the borough during the process, because the wine stays September to July for Nico, a little bit early for me. We extract the wine in March, April, but the pH of the wine during the process of élevage go down, and it's very easy to don't do malolactic fermentation because the acidity a little bit higher and the pH go down. And if you look the sulfate, total sulfate, where it's not really strong, we use a little. But we control the bacteria. We never do malolactic fermentation for this to have no bacteria in the shed. I think it's the same for Nico. I think you don't do malolactic fermentation too, Laurent?
Correct, absolutely correct, Nico, yes, true.
So we will just explain it. So it's very detailed pH and pH. It's very special. So I think it's a very deep discussion. So, but if we start now with Nicolas Maillart with Platine. This is Platine. We have now. We will have in our class once a day. I want to say I have to open a bottle and I need this noise because of the pandemic. Sometimes it's not so easy, and I like this noise of champagne to open a bottle. It's super. So we have now Platine, and it's a Premier Cru. Explain us a little bit. I know Alfred Krasia, they have crus as well, but explain us what is the Premier Cru and the Grand Cru, Nico.
Okay, it's a classification made in the 30s. It changed from time to time, but the idea is a Grand Cru. You have around 300 villages in Champagne that are able to produce champagne. Around, I think it's 19 are classified in Grand Cru. They are considered as the best expression of champagne. So they are called the Grand Cru with correlation. They are called 100%. So if the champagne said the price of the grapes is €5 per kilo, so the negociant will pay €5 per kilo, 100%. It was all time because today it's no control at all. But we are talking about history. And Premier Cru are the village. So you have 43 village Premier Cru. They have a classification between 90% to 99%. And so they are considered not as the best expression, but as a great expression of champagne. And you have all the other villages which are not classified. It's historical. It doesn't mean that the not classified villages are not doing good. It's part of the history.
It's a classification a long time ago, and and it's not like in Burgundy where you have the plots which are crus, or in Bordeaux where you have the chateaus. In Champagne you have the villages. They are certified as Premier Cru and Grand Cru, and but I think there are a lot of other areas. You already told us that they make very good champagne, and without writing Premier Cru, or they have not the plots, or in a village, around the village, the grapes to mention Premier Cru. So now we have a total different champagne in our class. What the color is totally different. So it's more yellow, this one of Platine, and this is very clear golden yellow from Krasia. So this is already a color. You see the color a little bit in your class as well. And yeah, it smells very complex. And so explain us a bit, what is your philosophy about making this kind of champagne?
Okay, the Platine is really, it's typical for my vineyards. You have around the same proportion of grapes than in my vineyard. It really shows all this variety, the diversity of village I've got. So inside you have 57% of Pinot Noir, 28% of Chardonnay, and 15% of Meunier. And it's coming from the three village. So the idea of this one is really to show the power of the Pinot Noir, and then I blend Chardonnay and Meunier in order to make it a Pinot Noir more accessible. In the range, I've got pure Pinot Noir, but the idea of this one is to make a classical champagne for aperitif. You can enjoy anytime. And if you want something more complex, you can go for something else in my range.
Yeah, but it's already nutty. You have these brioche notes, and
I
like it very, very, very much. And on the palate, you have fine bubbles, and it's round as well because you are doing malolactic, malo.
No, there is no malolactic. But
no malolactic, but excuse me.
Yeah.
It's but it's nevertheless it's round, and then at the end it's fresh as well. So what do you think? What can we combine for food? Because I think people normally take champagne or sparklings as an aperitif, and for me it's very important that we can explain to people, take something to eat, take a plate or whatever. What do you think? What is a good plate for it?
It's a very good match. Very classical. It's Iberico or pata negra with bread, and if you want with truffle, that's very good with that.
Okay. So later we will explain your second champagne, the rosé, and because it's a rosé, it's totally different. So if we are going now further on to Montagne de Reims, we come to Villemar. Laurent, you are working in barrels as well, but you have big foudre as well, so big barrels. And so explain us, how do you work? It's a family estate, and for generations as well. And it's up to you now.
Thank you, Gary. So really happy to be with you tonight. Villemar Champagne House is a familial house since 1890. It's my great-great-grandfather who settled this house, and I have the pleasure to be the 5th generation. So my great-great-grandfather was, he had a very nice name, Désiré Villemar. So we are located in Montagne de Reims, so Rilly la Montagne, south of Reims, not far away from Nico, from Ecueil.
Yeah.
Exactly. It calls Rilly the mountain because it's just at the basement of Montagne de Reims, which is this green crown which share the two main cities of Champagne, Reims on the north and Épernay on the south. as said Nicolas just before, this area, Rilly la Montagne and the village around, they are mainly planted in Meunier and Pinot Noir, like something like around 80%. Villemar is a paradox because we own 11 hectares and we have 70% Chardonnay and 30% Pinot Noir. Normally, Rilly la Montagne is a vineyard with north or northeast exposition, but most of our vineyards are south exposition and on very chalky soil. This is the main reason that we are at the opposite ratio with our 70% Chardonnay. Just one more thing to precise for tonight. Normally, when you have 11 hectares, or sometimes, I don't know, for Nico, 16 hectares, but you can be close from 80 or 90 plots of vineyards. And for Villemar, we have only 12 plots, which means that we can give our right impulsion. We can make the vineyard culture and expression we want. And the second fact is that for Villemar, everything is not 2, 3, 4, 5 different villages spread, or something like 10, 12, 15 kilometers around, but it's only 800 meters all around the domain. So this is very, very unique. So as I told you, high proportion of Chardonnay. Our philosophy, like I could say Nico's brothers, our two Nicos tonight, is to make wine first and bibbers after. We are still using a traditional press, a vertical press coca, 4,000 kilograms. Every grapes are pressed on this traditional press, and everything per gravity. First racking after 24 hours of decantation, and we put all the grape juice, Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, directly, as you said, in large oak cask, we call foudre, F-O-U-D-R-E, for the future non-vintage. These are the two cuvées we are going to taste tonight, Grande Réserve and Cuvée Ruby. And specifically for the vintage, I ferment and aged for 10 months in small barrels, 228 liters Burgundy barrels.
Burgundy barrels, yeah.
Yes, and from a specific cooper, and always 10 months. So from the first alcoholic fermentation, September, until beginning or mid-July for the bottling. So it's really a very good friend of mine always say the wood is a good servant but a bad master, which means that we are just looking for the micro-oxygenation, just a nice texture of the wine, something just silky. And I play with a longer aging on the lees in the bottle after the bottling, just to underbalance this micro-oxygenation coming from the wood. So we don't do the malolactic fermentation like
the others,
my two Nicos.
Yeah.
And as said, Nicos from Alfred Krasia, totally agree with him. We have a high proportion of Chardonnay, which means we have always low pH. I don't want to lose anyone, but always pH under 3. So naturally, it prevents malolactic fermentation. And plus, all our, we call larger cask room or cask room, are temperature control. So we can easily prevent the malolactic fermentation. So, the philosophy and the way is just to keep this freshness, this typicity, this initial acids level, and we keep this precision and crispiness in our wine. And we always want to show what the nature gives us, and just to have the expression of our grapes, but something precise, elegant, and with a certain gourmandise.
Yeah, I have already been in your winery, and it's very impressive. If you go there, people can visit your winery and by rendezvous. Sure. And so it's very impressive because you have these big foudres. And but if we taste now your wines, and we will talk about reserve wines as well, because there are wines which are with an assemblage of reserve wines as well. And I know you are working with the reserve wines, and they are in the foudre as well. But we start now with your first wine. It's a Grand Reserve. It's also a Grand Cru. It's a Grand Cru from a Premier Cru. Excusez-moi. It's a Premier Cru, and. So a lot of winemakers now and small wineries, they put a lot of information now on the backside, and it's becoming more and more fashion about dosage and everything. So Nicolas, he has written all the years behind in here on the back label, which years, different years are in this champagne. And so you explain us a little bit about this wine.
Sure. So Grand Reserve is made with 70% of Pinot Noir and 30% of Chardonnay. This is our entry level. So it's made mainly with 50% of 2017 harvest and 50% with reserve wine from the previous harvest, which means 16 and 15. So 50% of 17 and 50% of 16 and 15. Mm-hmm. All the wine ferment and age in larger casks for 10 months. After it stay 2 years on the lees in the bottle, and I like to have a minimum 6 months, 10 months, sometimes 12 months of disgorgement. This is very important for Vinmar style, to keep a minimum of time after disgorgement to give more complexity, more expression, more balance to my wine. And this it's a very important philosophy for Vinmar. So the Grand Reserve is more the expression of the Pinot Noir, something round, even a little bit crispy. Grand Reserve is a little bit biscuity, white flower flavors, and maybe the best way to taste it and to enjoy it is aperitif or to start a meal. It's easy to taste.
Yeah, but you have this crispiness, you already told us, and I think you have some red fruits as well, a hint of red fruits, and all the wines without malo, I think they have this finesse. It's very, very elegant, and it's for me it's a good aperitif. But if you have perhaps some fish, or it works very well.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
It works very well. Okay, and I know when we are talking of champagne, we are talking of sustainability as well, and because there is a movement now of sustainability. You have different kinds of certification, and the Champagne area, they have their own label, Champagne Durable, and but others, that you have others naturally as well, and you have the international organic label and biodynamic label. But when we start now with Nicolas, with Alfred Krasia, concerning sustainability, I think it's very important so that other generations will have this kind of champagne. And how do you work with your growers, Nicolas? Because you are responsible for a small part of your own wines, but the growers have to work with you. And so, what is your approach?
You have different certification in Champagne. HVE, we say, and VDC, viticulture durable en Champagne. Of course, all the growers are not HVE or VDC for Alfred Krasia. But one thing very important, because we work in wood, we can work differently, each different grower, each different mar. And during the process, we invite the grower to taste their wine. Like a farmer is very noble term for me. Like a farmer, the grower are very proud of the work, and it's very important to have a nice quality for Alfred Krasia. Of course, we speak about this, about certification, but one thing very important for me is a discussion. We start with a discussion, what we want with the quality when they pick the grapes, and we have no problem about that. And of course, for give the way for the grower, take the good way, we help us with a prime. We pay a little bit more the kilogram for the people have a certification.
Okay, and Nicolas Maillart, you are really responsible for your own wines. So you have not growers who work for you. So explain us what is your approach. And I know you are working in a certain way of sustainability, but you want to be certified, or what is your opinion?
Yeah, we have HVA certification and viticulture durable en Champagne, and also 2 years ago I decided also to move to organic certification. So we are in conversion now, because but you know, to be organic, it's a long process. It's a lot of invest. So for me, it took time to go there.
Mm-hmm. And how do you work in the wine? So in the vineyards, how do you work? What kind of sustainable? In which way you work in the vineyards?
As I say, the organics. So today we just use organics. So we use sulfur and copper, mm-hmm. and nothing else.
Okay. So Laurent, what is your approach concerning sustainability? You have about 11 hectares. It's a lot of hectares as well to work in this way.
True. We are high value of environment, level 3. We are viticulture durable en Champagne. My father was in biodynamic, but not in the real easy period in the 70s. Well, I think all the registration, all of that is very important, but I think the most important is your own philosophy. Of course, you can have all this certification. We just to try to be concrete, we use only organic feedings, no chemical feedings. We always use plowing, no herbicides. And we try to use at the maximum sulfur and copper and other organic methods and biologic methods. So, but it's as said, Nico, it's always a long way to manage that, to achieve to that, and every year can be different from the previous one. Sometimes you can have dry years, which can be a little bit easier. Sometimes you can have really wet years. So you always you have to adapt, and you are not the master. It's always Mother Nature, which is the master. So we try to adapt all the time. All the time we try to adapt and try to respect the soil, the vine, and the humans. True.
Mm-hmm. And if we are talking now about sulfate, because sulfate is a lot of people discuss sulfate in the wines, and so Laurent, perhaps I know because of you don't use a lot of sulfur in the wines, and sulfate. How do you work?
Oh, okay, yes, it's funny because. Sometimes it's very commercial. A lot of person talk about sulfate and they think that it could be a problem for health, but it's one of the oldest natural matter from the antiquity, and we put a very, very slight dosage of sulfur at the pressing, during the press. We know that at the end of the first decantation, we lose a lot of this proportion, and at the end of the first alcoholic fermentation, we lose roughly all the sulfur, because the yeast consume that, and naturally the yeast produce some sulfur. After, for the winemaking, I have always a low pH, as I told you before, and low temperature. So we manage to prevent the non-malolactic fermentation. And always through all the aging winemaking, this level decrease. So we have very, very, very low level of free sulfur and total sulfur. But we have to be always very careful, because sulfur prevents certain problems, because naturally the wine will become vinegar. You understand that? So, and if the winemaker is there, is for something too. So everything has to be balanced always. Okay, everything has to be balanced.
I just tasted your wine during you have explained us, and I think you talk about chalkiness in this wine, and it's very, very chalky, I think, your wine. And in French you say on lèche la craie, and so this is a main part of Champagne, because you have this special areas with craie and with chalk, and this is very, very important, and this is really the impression of the terroir. Nicolas Maillart, I know you have already explained me sometimes that you don't use a lot of sulfur, because you work with wood, and it's a protection as well. Perhaps in a few words for the audience.
It's very difficult to explain, but for give you an idea, when you for the sulfite in the white wine in Champagne, you can use in total maximum 190 milligram per litre. For give you an idea, Alfred Krasia, we are under 70 milligram per litre, and we never had after 3 months or 6 months after disgorgement, we don't have. We have only total sulfite, never free sulfite. When you work in wood, because the wood in the season, sometimes they are empty, we burn sulfur inside the wood. And during the process, you have some sulfur go in the wood. When you keep the wine a long time in your barrel, the sulfite go in the wine, but not in sulfite, in acid sulfuric. And during the process, when you keep the wine 10 months for Laurent or 6 months for Alfred Krasia, during the process, you can analyze, and you look the pH go down, down, down. And of course, the acidity go up a little bit. And it's like a human. If I put you in acid solution, it's very difficult for you. It's exactly the same for the bacteria or for the yeast. If the pH is low, it's more difficult for the bacteria to develop the malolactic fermentation. But it's the same for the second fermentation, because we must really be careful about sulfite, because with pH very low, it's very difficult to do a second fermentation. And I think it's exactly the same for Nico or for Laurent. We make really be careful during the second fermentation process, because the pH is very low and we are not in good condition for the fermentation. When you do this is very important to control, and you can't imagine, because the people or because the grower don't do malolactic fermentation, you have a lot of sulfite in your wine, headache, and no, that's not true. We make really be careful about that.
Okay. Some words Nicolas Maillart, because there is a question, a very good question in the chat, and we have to answer it. And Nicolas, how do you work with sulfite and sulfate?
Well, it's exactly the same answer than my colleagues. But when you are in Champagne, you cannot have low, big sulfite, high level of sulfites. But I'm also training myself with no sulfites wines with a little part of my wines with a Pinot Noir, and it's now available. But it's like experimentation for me, and it's I cannot develop that on all my range. It's just, but it's very interesting. But sulfites, honestly, you can use a little bit, and it's helping the wines to be very fresh, delicate, and elegant, what we are expecting for a champagne. And it doesn't have any trouble, any headache with that. And as Nicolas said, it's not because you don't want malolactic, you have to add a lot of sulfites. You can have very low sulfites, and but it's our job as a winemaker to control that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so, we put sulfate in the wine, but very small quantity, but good time.
Yeah,
this is very important.
There is one very interesting question, because someone asked, pretend that I was a champagne consumer, how would you guide me to buy an artisanal champagne and not from one of the big champagne houses? So what is the reason to buy your champagne? And yeah, I think there are a lot of reasons out there.
If you
Laurent,
buy...
Laurent, on commence avec Laurent. We start with Laurent.
I think the richness of the Champagne region and all the Champagne house is diversity, and this is very important because you have from these 4 different regions, from the different winemakers. So of course we will give the best expression of our Champagne, and the best way is to taste first, to understand, to taste one bottle. And I think that the best way and the best image of a good bottle of Champagne is an empty bottle, and you have to open a second one. You see what I mean? So you have maybe to take pleasure, to enjoy the wine, to feel the wine, and to say, okay, this one I like it a lot, and I want to taste it again. So as I told you before, maybe wine first and bubbles afterwards.
Nicolas Maillart, one sentence? I know you love to explain these things.
Today, in my glass, one empty, one full for the next one, but I have only Alfred Krasia at home today, but you have different wine at home for you. And you have 3 different wine, sure, with the same philosophy, because we have 3% now working wood, 3% now work without malolactic fermentation. But I'm sure you have, because I tasted regularly, we have many occasions with Artisans du Champagne to drink a glass of champagne. And I tasted the wine from Nico Laurent. You have 3 different wine. You have the same philosophy. We want to make the maximum high quality with approximately the same idea in wood with no malolactic fermentation, but because the grapes are different, because the year are different, because Nico work in Ecueil or Laurent in a Rilly, and for Alfred Krasia, different place in Champagne, you have 3 different wine with very strong identity. And for me, Champagne region, Champagne is magic word, but you have many possibilities to make a nice Champagne, nice Champagne. For me, it's very important because Champagne is not, I think it's boring to drink always the same things. And with the Champagne region, You can drink champagne with different philosophy. I love that.
I think the most important thing is, for me, champagne is really diversity. And you have these big brands, and it's important as well, because people sometimes like the same taste. And then you have these small wineries. You have these, and you are working in a different way. You can change sometimes a little bit the style, and you have your style, you have your philosophy, but sometimes you can look like Nicolas Maillart. He can just do some efforts concerning no sulfide, so it's easier, I think, and then you have more diversity to taste. Nicolas, one sentence concerning why should people buy your champagne and artisanal?
Yeah, for me, I think it's, as the author said, it's the best way to discover that champagne can be magical. I understand that it's more comfortable to go to the assemblage classic from the beggars because you know the taste. But it's like when you go to the restaurant, you never go always to the same restaurant. I think you can, if I like in my cellar, I've got also the champagne from also my other partner. I really like sometimes to taste something else. Like in Burgundy, I don't have always the same producer. It's sometimes I want something fresh. Sometimes I want something more oaky, something more butternuts. It's so wonderful to discover that champagne, it's not just one taste, but it's multiple tastes.
Yeah, it's magic. And there is one moment. I have to, because there is a question in the chat, and I think it's very important as well, because someone has said, I understand that 2020 was a very good vintage. So I think it was a very good vintage. We talk about it a little bit later. Nevertheless, with COVID, business was very, very challenging. How can a consumer as myself help to support the magic you are creating in the bottle? I think you have to buy it, and you have good occasions in Germany to buy it. You ordered a lot of champagne and online, and I think you have to buy it. I think at this time we have to drink wine, and reasonable, naturally, not too much, but to support wineries in general is to buy and to taste. And I think at this time you have a very good occasion because you are sitting at home, you can try something to eat, you have the challenge. And when you go in a restaurant, sometimes you only have one or two different champagnes or other sparklings, and at home now you really can taste. And I think this is the most important thing, to buy it. And Nicolas.
And you can find a good occasion for drinking champagne every day. Sometimes because you are lucky, sometimes because you are in love or not, because you have a good occasion in your work, or always, or birthday, always you can find a good occasion to drink a glass of champagne.
Yeah, for sure. And when Nicolas Maillart, he explained a little bit again his wines. I smelled again. So I think sometimes wines, I say wines, it's champagne, because normally every time you say wines in champagne. So therefore for me it's wine as well. It's now in my head, in my heart, and it sometimes champagne takes time in a glass as well, and not too cold. So I think it becomes more complex now, Nico, your wine, and with a little bit more air. So now because people, they bought 6 bottles, we want to explain a little bit the other 3 bottles, so that they can taste it later. Because of COVID, people cannot be with so many people at home. Perhaps they drink 6 bottles, I don't know, but it would be good for you. And but for those who want to taste them later, we start with Nicolas Maillart with the 2007 from Alfred Krasia. So explain us a little bit the grape varieties and how do you work? It's a 2007, so only wines from 2007 can be in this wine. It's a vintage wine. This is the first principle.
2007 is a hot year, and for this reason we use a lot of Chardonnay. You have in this wine 65% Chardonnay, 85% Pinot Noir, and 17 Pinot Meunier. When we do vintage, we try to keep Alfred Krasia style. Of course, this is very important things, but we try to do the best expression with the quality of the year. We try to do the best with 1 year, and it's more difficult to do, I think. One thing very important, this wine now in bottle in 2008, now 13 years in the bottles. You must imagine is a long process. And they have the bottle are on the sediment since 2008, and we just disgorged this bottle 6 months ago. Mm-hmm. To keep a long time, of course, we don't speak about the malolactic, we don't speak, but all the small things we spoke about that are very important to keep the wine for a very long time. One thing more for Alfred Krasia, if you look at these bottles, you have 2 different neck. The first one, the Brie Classic, and the second, the vintage. The neck is different because for this one, we use a crown caps to close the bottles. Make a very good work for 5, 6, 7 years, I think. But my philosophy, or the Alfred Krasia philosophy, is only for traditional vintage, we use a square neck, and we do the second fermentation and aging with cork, not with caps. And is one of the solutions to preserve the wine about oxidation for a long time. If you test the two different solutions with exactly the same wine, you can fill with caps. Is really good, but you must drink now, and you have possibility to keep longer with cork. After this one, you can feel we have more maturity, of course, more expression. The wine start to have some not yellow fruit, I think, yellow fruit, but not mushroom. It's not the third aroma. We are only on the second aroma. Yellow one, exotic. You have some bread, some vanilla, but you can feel the wine is ready to drink now. But if you forgot in your cellar for maybe 10 years, I'm not afraid about that. But my opinion, you can drink this bottle and buy a new one if you want.
Okay.
It's better for the business now, but I love, for me, it's very nice expression of Alfred Krasia and Champagne is the vintage, very traditional one.
Yeah. So vintage, which is already a little bit older. So if we go now, we have 2 rosé wines, and we have Nicolas Maillart Grand Cru. Now we have a Grand Cru. And it's from Bouzy. Bouzy, it's a very famous village for red wine, for Pinot. Explain us, how do you work with this wine? And there are different vintages inside, and concerning the dosage as well.
Yeah, the idea for me to use Bouzy for the rosé, it was to focus on the great Pinot Noir expression you can have there. And I've got also Chardonnay there, so that's why I'm blending. So it's 60% Pinot Noir, 40% Chardonnay. Partly also aged in barrel. In different vintage we've got inside, it's base vintage 17, blended with 16, 15, and perpetual, part of perpetual also. And dosage is 4 grams. The dosage can change depending of the base vintage. Usually we are lower than 6 due to different facts. Yeah.
Here you have 4 grams, and it's 4 grams written in it, and so it's very low dosage. And the degorgement, it's September 2020 with our bottles here in Germany, and yeah, I think it's really an impression. And if we talk about perpetuel, that means these are reserve wines, and it's a special system.
Yeah. perpetual means that we've got 3 tanks like that. So we, for example, we take part of, meaning this tank represent 100 hectoliters. I can take, for example, 10 hectoliters in 18, and I replace with 10 hectoliters from 18. So it's perpetually, we take part of that and we fill it again, because a tank has to be full always. And this also helps the wines to be always very consistent. And it also helps to have more mature notes in the wines. It's okay. It's quite very common to have that in Champagne. But the idea of my rosé is to make a rosé very fresh, very for aperitif, a lot of elegance, little fruits inside.
We go now to Villemar with the Rosé Cuvée Ruby. And Laurent, you have it in your class, and it's very ruby one. And explain how does it work?
Yes, ruby comes from the jewels, and it's like the beautiful colors. This one is made with 90% of Pinot Noir and 10% of Chardonnay. I like to play always with Chardonnay to give a little bit more tension, precision, and a little bit more freshness. And the base year is 2017 from the harvest, and 50% of reserve wine 16 and 15. This champagne is made by assemblage of red wine, so 15% of Pinot Noir red wine, and the assemblage is made just before the bottling. The wine has aged for 10 months in a large oak cask. So the idea of this rosé champagne is just to give you pleasure. This is the expression of the red fruits, of the pink grapefruits, and just to give you balance between joy, between crispiness and complexity. So and you can drink it for aperitif, or sometimes with avocado and prawns. Or I love rosé champagne with sushi or sashimi or tataki salmon or tuna.
We are getting hungry, I think. I have had a duck with some red cherries in summer with this wine, and I loved it very much, and I think it was a really great one. There is one remark in the chat. For me, a pleasure is to taste different champagnes, and she said, I prefer to taste smaller champagne houses, and she loves more the personal identity than with the bigger brands. And I think, yes, it's like this, but nevertheless, the big brands are doing very good champagnes as well, but perhaps a little bit more individuality in your champagne, because it's a little bit flexible.
It's true, you have always in our family house, you have always a human scale, a human identity.
Yeah.
Because we try to manage from A to Z.
Yeah, I think this is very important, that you can go there, that you can really visit them, that you can talk with you, and that you can discuss and really taste the wines. So we will come now at the end of our session. So thank you very, very much that you have been with us, to the audience as well. 2020, it was already mentioned, it was a good year for Champagne, and hopefully 2021 will be a good year for everything. And but I think it's an occasion to be so très proche with you together, and otherwise it's not possible. I think this is a challenge as well, and a chance that we can be together tonight, and by a live stream. And what what do you think about this kind of stream, Nico? One word, only one word or one sentence, a small. It was okay for you, and it's.
Yeah. It's always a pleasure to share our passion with you consumers. So because of the situation, we cannot travel, so it's good to share.
Okay, Nicolas.
Very nice evening. Drink 2 glasses of champagne tonight. It's very good with friends. This is very important. Champagne is a passion, but is wine. You don't drink alone. It's always very nice to drink with your friends. And we are with friend person now tonight. And thank you very much for helping us.
Yes, Laurent.
It's true that first of all, it's a pleasure, but we make our champagne for sharing, to give emotion. And maybe, as you said, this is a complex period, 2020. We hope that 21 will be better, but our wine can be a link, because you can drink it, you can taste it at home. And of course, you can come here in Champagne and we can taste it together. But I'm sure maybe this wine is a very great link and way for the future. So
I have something to eat tonight, and I want to say cheers to everyone, and thank you very much that you have been with us, and see you in our next streams in the next weeks or whenever, and hopefully soon analog in the Champagne area. So cheers to everyone, and bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
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 Take care.
Au revoir.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Ciao.
Bye.